So, a friend of mine who has known me for a while keeps referring to the stage of life I'm in as my tea and chickens era. And the first time she said it, I felt a little sheepish. But when I thought a little more about it, it made me wonder, what if midlife isn't about reinventing ourselves, but it's more about returning to the people that we always were? Hi, friends. I'm Megan Francis. Welcome to my channel. I'm an author and a midlife mom of 5 mostly adult kids. And on this channel, I talk about living creatively in tune with our natural surroundings and gentle midlife reinvention. And I'm really excited for this topic today because actually, I had a book come out about a year ago, and in that book, I had a passage where I talked about tapping into what I called little girl energy, the things that you really, really loved when you were tiny, 4, 5, 6 years old, before you started to feel pressure to adapt to the world around you, to meet expectations, to do things that you thought other people wanted you to do, to fit in, to make money, like all the reasons that we change over time. What if you could go back to before that? What would your life look like? What would you love the most? A lot of times we talk about midlife as though it's got to be this re-energizing, this renaissance, this reinvention. There's a lot of words in there. But I like the word returning because I don't feel like we have to go far from who we've always been to ease into this stage of life just a little more gently and a little more authentically and in a way that will help sustain us for what's ahead. And when I think about that for myself, back to that little girl energy, I'm really thinking about things like being out in nature, trees, flowers, plants. I was that little girl constantly picking things around me to make potions from. I loved books. I loved to curl up with a book and read. I loved animals. I loved tea, even as a little girl. I was a pretty dreamy kid. I wasn't necessarily literally quiet. I think I was one of those kids that narrated things a lot out loud and was probably always singing or talking to myself. But I think I had probably a little bit of a quieter energy. But then as time went by, I think I realized, especially let's say around junior high and high school, that being more outgoing, that being more bubbly, that being more extroverted won me social points. I could have that life of the party energy, and I really leaned into that for a lot of reasons. It helped me to fit in new places. I went to several new schools. I've lived in a lot of new towns. I've had a lot of new work environments. And I think bringing that sort of, big extrovert energy in has helped. It's helped me make friends. It's helped me fit in more quickly. It's helped me kind of assert myself, right? And that's all great. No complaints there. Obviously, we all have multiple sides to our personalities, and that's a side of mine. But I don't think I was always great over the years at seeing how much that could drain me and realizing that I also needed that counterbalance, that I needed to have quiet time, that I needed to be surrounded by nature, that I needed time to decompress, that I needed something different in my life. I got divorced the year I turned 40, and that was kind of a mind job. But I think I realized that year that I needed to go into the decade of my 40s with a really different approach and posture and energy than I had brought into my 30s. And I started to pull back from a lot of the networks and social expectations and things like that, where the expectation would be that I would be very on and very available. I just really felt like I couldn't do that anymore. And by the time I was 43, I was settling into what my friend lovingly dubbed my tea and chickens era, which I just love. It really sums up who I am and what I'm all about. Besides the obvious, I got chickens, that was sort of the gateway to just approaching my life a little differently. And that sort of led from one thing to the next. And in many ways, I do still have a fairly outgoing life. I go into an office for work a few times a week. I still do public things like this video I'm doing right now. I put on a literary festival last year. I still do public appearances for my own book, and I've helped with author friends and their public appearances. So I'm definitely still out there. It's just that the pace of my life has become much more intentionally steady. And I'm trying to think how to say this because I don't always think that the slow living ideal that we talk about is always realistic or even ideal, honestly. We all have things we have to do in life, and sometimes that can look like a lot of activity in a short period of time. I think for me, it just means that I keep coming back to this home, this center that is quieter, that is based in nature and ritual and routine and chickens and books and tea and all of those things. So yes, this year I did complete my tea sommelier certification. That was something I really wanted to learn more about and wanted to do a deep dive into, and I completed it in April. So I'm now a certified tea sommelier. More about that to come. I'm writing a novel, I'm reading a lot, and I'm spending a lot of time just looking at my chickens while sipping tea. I love it. Now, if you look back to your little girl life, and you can go back to when you were 12 or 10, but I think sometimes it's better to go even further back to when you were maybe like 7 or 8, and really were just still the wildest and most essential version of yourself. What did you love? Who were you? Is there a way that you can tap into that energy as you're building this next stage of your life? All those cliche things that we can be drawn to in midlife, there's a reason for that. And I personally am leaning hard into my tea and chickens era. I'd love to hear from you. What is your version of the tea and chickens era? What does your life look like right now? If you could name your era, what would it be? Leave a comment below. And hey, thank you so much for watching this video. It would help me so much if you would like this or drop a comment. Even just an emoji helps. Share this with a friend who you think might like it or who might identify with me in my tea and chickens era. It will really help my channel grow, and it'll help this video find more viewers. Thanks everyone. If you want to find more from me, including some exclusive members only content, you can go to my Substack. That's at meganfrancis.substack.com. That's Megan with 2 A's, and I'll drop that link below as well. And I hope whatever your version of a tea and chickens era is, that you are enjoying it and leaning into it with no reservations. Thanks, friends. I'll see you next time.